will talk today about diabetes, which is the most common endocrine disease, and we will talk about the terminology of diabetes mellitus, as we know that diabetes means siphon, the translation of it in Latino, and mellitus means honey. And this is denote that the patient have polyuria and frequency. So many diseases don't have a special day for it to be denoted, but few diseases have been known for their day. The WHO has chosen the 14th of November of each year to be named World Diabetes Day. And this is the birthday of one of the discoverers of the insulin. And during this day, the mass media and the propaganda and the health institutions and the scientific societies like the American Health Association and the American Association of Clinical Endocrinologists and other societies start to talk about diabetes, etiology, complications, management, and many other activities to increase the awareness among the public regarding this disease. We will talk just few lines regarding the history. First of all, diabetes mellitus was mentioned in 1500 BC by the Egyptian civilization. Indians called it Madhoniha, which means by the old Indian language, the honey urine. Galen then called it diarrhea urinosa, while Thomas Wells added the term mellitus to differentiate it from diabetes insipidus. Ritos of Cappadocia first used the term diabetes in the first century, and there is what we call the Saint Vincent Declaration, which was being announced by the 989, which illustrate all the human rights regarding the diabetes and the patients with diabetes and the discrimination against them. WHO previously stated that the world is witnessing a diabetes tsunami because of the high incidence and the prevalence of this disease among our public, especially in the China and India and the Middle East, and also in the USA because of high prevalence of obesity. As we know that the diabetes now is regarded as a pandemic. It was previously regarded as an epidemic, but now it is regarded as a pandemic due to high prevalence and incidence. Why we should concentrate about diabetes mellitus? One of the things that the doctor and the medical student should concentrate on it is the cost of the disease on the society. So we can see in this graph that the total cost of diabetes due to direct and indirect consequences. The direct consequences due to hospitalizations, physician visits, medications, and other complications. While the indirect cost came from also premature death, which means that the patient will not live long to participate in the social life. And the disability and morbidity which cause him to take many days for sick leave, and this will affect in a bad way the work and the financial status of his family and his society in general. We see also in this figure that the global diabetes market is affecting the financial resources of every country by the drugs which is used to treat it. And if the patient was type 1 diabetes, by the insulin and the accessories with the insulin, and the tools which are used for the monitoring of this blood glucose, like continuous blood glucose meters, which is called by the name glucometer, and the test strips, and etc. The global burden of diabetes is huge, and for this reason, we should and we must concentrate on this disease and know everything regarding the general information about it. 366 million people have diabetes in 2011. By 2030, it is expected to rise to half billion. The number of type 2 diabetes is increasing in every country. 80% of patients with diabetes live in low and middle income countries. The greatest number of people with diabetes are between 40 to 60 years of age, which means type 2 diabetes. 50% of diabetes are undiagnosed, and this is also another problem for the physician and for the patient also. The diabetes was at least 11% of total healthcare expenditure, which is called catastrophic expenditure, and this is affecting the country and it is healthcare financial resources in a very bad way. We can see here the ranking of the country in 2000 and the expected rank in 2030, and we can see the number of people in millions in every country. India and China are regarded as diabetes capitals because 20 to 30 million people or person with diabetes living in India and China. And after them is the USA, Indonesia, Japan, Pakistan, Russian Federation, Brazil, Italy, Bangladesh. While it is expected in 2030 that the India, China, USA stay the same, but the numbers will be hugely increased. And we can see here is the Egypt will be enter the top 10 countries with the number of patients with diabetes. This is also another graph which show us the percentage, not the number of the patients in millions, but the percentage of population which have obesity and diabetes. And we can see in the second graph that many Arab countries like United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, and Egypt, they have a high prevalence of diabetes, especially type 2, among their population. And this is a very huge problem in Iraq also because the prevalence of diabetes in Iraq it is reaching 20% according to some figures. As we said, that diabetes, whether type 1 or type 2, is a common disease and is the most common endocrine disease among the worldwide population. And these pictures for some celebrities and actors which have diabetes and treated by oral drugs or by insulin, and it did not affect their career. Now we will talk about the definition in simple ways. Clinical syndrome characterized by either absolute insulin deficiency or relative deficiency of insulin with insulin resistance. As we said previously, it is a global pandemic, and diabetes regarded the most common cause of eye blindness, leg amputation, and end-stage renal disease among population. Type 2 diabetes is the more common type of diabetes, and it is responsible for about 90 to 95% of all patients or cases of with diabetes. Diabetes classified broadly into type 1, which is subdivided into A and B. A is the immune-mediated type, which is the most common type, responsible for 90%, and idiopathic with about 10%. Type 2, which is commonly occur in obese and rarely in non-obese. Gestational diabetes, which is diabetes diagnosed for the first time during pregnancy, and other specific secondary types due to disease in the pancreas, like pancreatitis or CA pancreas, or due to other diseases which affect diabetes and antagonize the action of insulin, like acromegaly or Cushing disease or syndrome or hyperthyroidism, or drugs like anti-epileptic and also some diuretics and corticosteroids and some rare genetic other disease like dead mode or other disease. As we said previously, diabetes is four types, and we will talk about the type 1 and type 2, which is very important in internal medicine and in the biology. And we can show and read this table and put the comparison between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. The onset of type 1 usually sudden with the classical signs and symptoms of weight loss, polyphagia, increased eating, and polydipsia, increased thirst, and polyuria, increased urination with weight loss, while the onset of type 2 usually gradual. The age of onset, type 1 usually occur at young age, usually less than 30 years of age, but can occur at any age, but usually it is in young age, while type 2 diabetes occur mostly in adults, those who are more than 30 or 40 years of age. The body physique or habitus or weight, usually in type 1, the patient will appear to us as thin or normal, while type 2 usually or often is obese. Ketoacidosis, which is a complication of uncontrolled diabetes, is common in type 1 while it is rare in type 2. The autoantibodies are usually present in type 1 because it is autoimmune disease, as we will talk later, while it is absent in type 2 diabetes. Endogenous insulin could be low or absent or could be rarely normal in type 1 diabetes, especially at the early stages, while usually in type 2 diabetes it is normal or decreased or increased according to the stage or the week or the month since the signs and symptoms of diabetes. The concordance rate in identical twins is about 50% in type 1, while it is 90% in type 2, and this means that the genetic factor is more important in type 2 than type 1. Type 2 is the most prevalent and common type of diabetes. It's 90 to 95, while it is type 1 is less prevalent, responsible for about 5% of prevalence of diabetes. We will remind you just few points regarding physiology of the pancreas, and as we all know that pancreas has endocrine and exocrine parts. The endocrine constitute of alpha cell, which secrete glucagon, and beta cell, which is responsible for the secretion of insulin, and delta cell, which secretes somatostatin, and polypeptide cell, which until now there is controversy about the hormones or the peptides which are secreted from it. Insulin usually before it is secreted, it is called the proinsulin, which is composed of insulin and the peptide. And as we know that the insulin is the only anabolic purely anabolic hormone. And the exocrine function, or the part of the pancreas, is responsible for the secretion and synthesis of pancreatic enzymes, which will help for the digestion of carbohydrates and other types of starch. And this is also just to remind us and refresh your information regarding the anatomy and the histopathology or the histology or the pancreas, in which occur and engulf and surrounded by the skin part of the duodenum, and it is exocrine tissue, which is composed of acinar cells, while the pancreatic islet cells, which compose the endocrine part of the pancreas. And we can see the alpha and beta and delta and T cells. And we can see also that beta cells constitute and compose 60 to 80% of the mass of the endocrine part of the pancreas, which is the largest part. Also, this figure was just for our information refreshment, and we can see the proinsulin is composed mainly of A chain and beta chain, and the C chain, which is the same as the C peptide as we called previously in the previous slides. And after the secretion, the C peptide or the C chain will be removed, and we will have the fully composed insulin, which is composed of A chain and beta chain. This graph also shows us the process of the secretion of the insulin, and we can see that the glucose, when it reaches the cell, it will be uptaken by the GLUT2 channel or receptor, and there is another channel which is called ATP sensitive potassium channel, which is dependent on the potassium for its depolarization, and also another channel which is called voltage gated calcium channel, which is dependent on the calcium. And with between the interaction between these two channels with the glucose uptake, it will lead to the degranulation of the insulin and insulin release. After we talk about the prevalence, incidence, some points regarding the physiology, anatomy, histology, biochemistry, and the synthesis and secretion of the insulin, we will see the action of the insulin on various tissues, and this table, which is well organized, will show us that the action of insulin among various tissues and cells. On the liver, it will decrease the insulin action on the liver, will decrease the glucose production, while it will increase the glycolysis, increase the triglyceride synthesis, and will increase the protein synthesis. On the muscle, it will increase the glucose transport, glycolysis, glycogen deposition, and also the protein synthesis. And as we said previously, insulin is the only pure anabolic hormone. On the adipose tissue, the action of the insulin is to increase the glucose transport, increase the lipogenesis, lipoprotein lipase activity, which is very important for the lipid metabolism, and it will decrease the intracellular lipolysis. We will talk now some points about the etiopathogenesis of type 1. Type 1 usually constitutes 5% or less, or more slightly, among the population with diabetes mellitus. It is a slow autoimmune T-cell mediated disease, and it will not appear clinically until 70 to 90% of the beta cell mass and cells is destroyed. It is a paternal disease, which means that it, it can be inherited rarely, as we say, it is autoimmune and rarely genetic. The genetic play one third of its etiology, in contrary to the type 2, which is up to 90%, and the concordance said, as we said, it is 40%. D3, DR3, and DR4 haplotype are responsible for the genetic parts of its inheritance. Other factors responsible for the etiopathogenesis of type 2 diabetes mellitus is environmental, and there is some theory which is called the hygiene theory, in which the scientists have that the children which are not exposed to the environmental bacteria or viruses or toxins, their immunity system will stay delayed and immature, which will lead later to development of many autoimmune diseases like asthma or other disease, and one of them is diabetes. Viral infections in the childhood, like mumps, coxsackie, rubella, Epstein virus, and cytomegalovirus, also responsible for some part of their etiopathogenesis in type 2, type 1, sorry, diabetes. Diet, bovine serum albumin, which is present in the cow milks, and the nitrose amines, which are present in some of the ultra-processed and processed meats and foods, and sometimes the coffee. There is controversy about coffee. These factors may be also responsible about the prevalence and incidence and etiopathogenesis of type 1 diabetes. Stress. Some researchers say that acute stress may precipitate and not cause. It may precipitate the clinical appearance of type 1 diabetes in those patients who have hidden inherited susceptibility to develop the disease, while chronic stress may be responsible for type 2. Thank you very much for your attention and listening. And the our textbook, which is dependent and we depend on it in the studying of diabetes, is Davidson Principle and the Practice of Medicine. Good luck for all of you, and God protect you. Thank you.